Hi, it's Richard again. I believe you're having a wonderful summit experience through the Q&A sessions and the presentations that you've watched and listened so far. I will speak to you finally on how to design lessons that increase student engagement and achievement. For the purpose of this presentation, we're looking at creating student-centered lesson plan that awakens their agencies and develops their thinking. Who comes to mind when we actually think of designing? I'm sure you are thinking of a photographer, a graphic designer, you're thinking of an artist, seamstress, and all those people that are considered to be creative. But if you look at the work that they do, they have a clear purpose or outcome that they have in mind, and then they plan to execute it. That is all design processes. So if you look at a seamstress, she has a clear product of a dress that she had in mind, and she cuts her patterns to cut the materials or the fabric in a way so that she can sew them together, create that product that she has imagined or purpose to create. So to design is just to have a purpose and intention and a plan to execute it. And that means that teachers are designers too. What do we design? We craft or create curriculum and learning experience that meet specific purposes or outcomes. You see, the idea of design is a bit more complex than we actually realize. It is important that we learn more about how to design well. Then it is important we realize that we need to learn more about how to design well. I mean, just creating learning experience that meet specific purposes cannot just happen when you just show up in class with a topic and then you keep telling and explaining and talking to students with the hope that you're informing and explaining, and all the instructions that you gave will actually result in learning. Learning is more complex than that. It will not just happen that way. And it's important as educators we understand the design process and apply design thinking so that we will be able to make the impossible work of making learning happen for many of the children in our class and in our learning space possible. If we look around us, we have all come across experiences of board design, and as you can see in these images, these are clear examples of poor design. In the classroom, there is also an examples of poor design, and as you can see in this animation, I am teaching, but are they learning? A lot more teachings are like preaching, right? And those are clear examples of poor learning design, and it's important we learn how to design well. And if we can do that, we need to appreciate what kind of learning that we want to enable for our children. And I took this definition by Chris Watkins, that learning is an activity of construction that is handled with or in the context of others and is driven by the learner's agency, the learner's willingness to invest emotionally and intellectually in a particular learning activity. So learning is about meaning making, construction, and it is also about co-construction. It's not just instruction. And that is why learning cannot be done for you. It has to be done by you, right? So we cannot learn for our students. They have to learn for themselves. And that means that we need to create experiences in classrooms that enable students to learn. So by just offering instruction does not really mean that learning has occurred. Learning occurs when the learner agency, his willingness to invest emotionally and intellectually in the learning process is actually ignited, right? And also the fact that students have opportunity to monitor, to review how they are learning and what strategies are working effectively for them so that they can become better aware of themselves as learners in the classroom. When we have that particular understanding of what worthwhile learning experience should look like, that it has to be done by the student, it has to be learner-centered, it has to be challenging, knowledge-centered, and that it has to be assessment-driven. The students know where they are in their learning, where they ought to be in their learning, and what they need to do in order to develop mastery, and that they have a good understanding of themselves as learners and what strategies and techniques works for them in their learning. Then we can actually design curriculum and learning experiences that actually meet specific purposes. So the students have to be engaged. They cannot be passive in their classroom for learning to happen. So when we talk about engagement, it is important that we understand basically what is not engagement in learning and what really engagement in learning looks like. You will be able to get a clear understanding of what exactly we should do to make that happen, that engagement happen. So let's look at what is not engagement. Engagement is not compliance. Do as the teacher wants. Finish all your works, finish all your homeworks. That is not learning. That is just works. That is just producing work. Engagement is not hands-on without minds-on. If it is work without really putting the student's mind to work, that is not engagement. Engagement is not the same as being on task and busy. So if you go to the class and the place is quiet and everyone is trying to solve like your math class, you're learning how to add fractions. Teacher will solve 1 or 2 questions and then you have to deal with 10 or more questions on your own, and everybody is busy on the task doing it. Those are stamina work. They are not learning. It does not breathe, neither does it require learning. Students are just engaged in fluency and stamina activities just to complete a task that has been assigned to them. Engagement in learning is not about just following instructions, okay? It's not just about having fun. Neither is it about being quiet. We are more concerned that everybody has to be quiet. Be quiet for what? To listen to the teacher alone talking. No, so the students always don't have an opportunity where they themselves are talking to learn, right? So being quiet doesn't mean there's an engagement, or being of good behavior does not mean that the students are engaged in learning. So this, for me, it paints a clear picture of the classroom I agree with. How does engagement look like in learning? When you go to a class and the students are keen to be there, they are excited in what they are doing, and they are curious about it, emotionally and in their behavior and in their thinking, you are talking about engagement. You can see that they are intellectually involved with what they are doing, and they are talking about it, they are discussing it intelligently, what they are being taught, and they are self-motivated. It's interesting. They just love to be in that space. They are intellectually invested themselves in learning and understanding and engaging with the content. And it's not like they have been driven to complete a task, right? They just want to do it. They just want to know more. Okay, that is engagement. Wanting to know more and investing both your heart and your mind in the learning process. And they won't run away when the thing gets tough, right? When they are presented with more complex tasks, develop a growth mindset to cope with that. Engaged students stick with difficult tasks and complex tasks, and they talk it through, they question it, they ask questions about them, and they seek for the right solutions to them. So that is a picture of an engaged classroom compared with the disengaged class that I grew up in. So that is engagement. How do we create that for students every day? How do we create engagement for students every day in our classroom? The simple formula that I have for you is teach with the end in mind, plan backwards. Teach with the end in mind and plan backwards. That is how you can teach for understanding. That is how you can increase design lesson plans that can increase students' engagement and their achievement, right? If we look at a typical traditional teacher, when they are planning their lessons, they think about the learning activities, right? What do I want students to do, right? And then they determine what the objectives will look like, exactly what students have to learn. And then they do the postmortem, they do the assessment to see whether learning has happened. But that kind of design processes really does not ignite students' agency, right? If learning is construction, if learning is co-construction that is driven by the learner agency, not the teacher's agency, then it's important that instructions should be designed backwards, right? So the first thing you do is determine the desired outcomes. What exactly in that lesson will students be able to do, know, and understand? You have to clearly define that, right? What exactly do you want them to know, understand, and be able to do? Once that is established, then throughout the learning experiences, you can look for evidences to see whether they are able to demonstrate they know this, they're able to demonstrate that they have an understanding of this, and they have acquired the skills that you want the students to develop. So in designing your plans, your lessons, first think about the KUDs. What do you want them to know? What you want them to be able to do? Which are the skills that you want them to be able to develop? And then you determine the assessment evidences, how you are going to check that they have learned it. And once you have designed those two facts, the content and the assessment, once you have been able to glue that from your syllabus or your curriculum, the third thing that you now can think about, now you can plan. What are they going to do so that they can learn the identified desirable results that you're looking for in this lesson? What learning activities are you going to put together to move students to the desired results? How are you going to teach the content so that students really can come to that level of uh, understanding, acquire the meaningful knowledge, and develop those skills that they need to succeed in the subject? So that is a simple formula and approach that we can actually employ in our planning processes to teaching for understanding that increases engagement and students' achievement. Thank you for joining me on this brief conversation about designing for engagement and for increase in students' achievement by thinking backwardsly in your plan, determine exactly what students you want students to know, understand, and do. And secondly, determine how will you know assessment as evidence of learning. What exactly activities are you going to put in place to be able to assess evidence of students' knowledge, understanding, and abilities? And then you design the learning activities and select the resources that will enable meaningful learning experiences for every child in that space. So thank you very much for connecting with us on Transform 2020. I believe it's been a wonderful experience.